Hello, AVAIYA family. Andy Anderson here. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are the co-owners of AVAIYA University. Thank you so much for joining us for our Breaking Free from Codependency curriculum. We have another great class lined up for you today with Dr. Erica Goodstone. She's going to be talking with us about the love experience, healing through love. Dr. Erica and I focus on what love is and why we choose the partners we do in our lives. Why is it that we fall in love with this person but not the other person? We also talk about three major causes of relationship difficulties, those being when we don't understand ourselves, when we don't understand our partners, and then ultimately when we don't understand the universe and how it works, and so much more. Thanks so much for joining us and enjoy the class. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AVAIYA's Breaking Free from Codependency curriculum. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for being here. Our fellow teacher, Dr. Erica Goodstone, is here to talk with us today about the love experience, healing through love. Dr. Erica is a healing through love mentor and relationship healer who helps men and women, individuals and couples, gay and heterosexual, heal their bodies and their relationships through love. Dr. Erica helps her clients create and reawaken their love, sexual passion, and intimate connection. She is a licensed mental health counselor and marriage therapist, a board-certified sex therapist and CEU provider. She's also a faculty member of the International Institute for Clinical Sexology, a somatic body psychotherapist, and board-certified personal and life and health wellness coach. So I think I got them all. Welcome, and thanks so much for being here, Dr. Erica.
Yes, I'm excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this, and I'm so intrigued by your topic. So let's dive into the topic of love. What does love mean to you?
Well, I just recently completed a summit of my own where I hosted it, The Science and Poetry of Love. And I noticed that each of the speakers seemed to emphasize one aspect of love, and there are so many. So I kind of like to explain love. It's an emotion. You know, you feel I love someone or I love doing something, but it's also a feeling and a sensation, like you're with someone and they touch you in a certain way, and that's what helps you to feel love for that person. The sensations in your body, feeling in your stomach or in your neck, somewhere, a tightening in your throat. There's sensations that help you to realize you are feeling that love or passion for someone. It's also a thought that I think I love you, because you can have those feelings, but your thought is something else and it's not connected. And that could be very confusing for yourself and for the other person. You can have a belief. I believe that I love someone, or maybe I should love them. And that may not be what you really feel. So you have a belief, and people marry someone based on a belief sometimes that this is what I should be with, and he's or she is going to be right for me, yet the feeling is not there. But if the feeling is there without some of the logic, it's not really love either. It's just a feeling. So it's also a need. We develop a need for someone, and that can be partly why we love them. And it's basically, with all of that, a choice and a decision. A friend of mine said that it's a decision to love someone, so that you make the choice in different moments to do the loving thing, to accept them with their flaws or whatever. It's an action, doing something, taking an action, and most of all, a way of being. So it's many things.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate you diving into this topic of love and all its different meanings. So like for people watching, how do we fall in love with this person and not the other person, right? Why are we attracted or fall in love with one person over the other? Why is that?
Well, one of the things that starts it is that the heart has 5,000 times the magnetic energy than the brain. So we may just see someone and feel that heart connection because it's vibrating. But why that happens has to do with so much and really what's going on in our brain. And the brain has this limbic system, and the hippocampus holds memory. So we remember something, maybe from childhood, from our parents' relationship, something is in there. And the amygdala deals with anxiety. I mean, holds those feelings of fear and anxiety. So somebody that we meet, we may have had a lot of anxiety and stress in our family life. And we meet this person who you feel those energetic feelings, but the brain is reacting to the way that person makes you feel anxious, or something like that.
Mhm.
Or the way that person in the moment makes you feel not anxious. They're somehow soothing to you, but you may see in them, you see everything within the first, it's either 4 seconds or 4 minutes of knowing someone, maybe 4 seconds. You know everything about them because you see the look in their eye, you see the posture, you hear the tone of their voice, you see so much more than you understand consciously.
Mm-hmm.
So this person may be saying these soothing words to you, and you say, this is someone I could not feel anxious with. But you may see a look in their face, a look in their eye that reminds you of the people that made you feel anxious. So that's just like a little piece of what could be going on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much more that in the first 3 months of life, I did my doctoral dissertation on this. There's a psychologist, Dr. Margaret Mahler, who worked with mothers and infants in the first 3 years of life. And when the bonding was not as good as it could be, the child developed separation anxiety, anxiety about connection or merger, and intense ambivalence. So anyone with that going on, if you also have that kind of thing going on, you're going to be attracted to each other. So, so one will pull away and one will go after it, but then if they come back, you might pull away. And so one of the things is the level of consciousness that you both operate out of. And another one is all these different aspects, the culture you were brought up in, and you either love that culture or maybe you're trying to get away from that culture, or maybe when you were growing up you heard about some ethnic group that was particularly sexy or particularly intelligent or something like that. And then you meet someone who fits that picture and all of a sudden you love them. So it goes on and on. There's just so much to why we connect with another person. Whether we had abuse in our background, you would think, I'm sorry to be rambling, you would think if you had abuse that you would know and you would choose the opposite, but you seem to choose what's familiar because your brain brings you to that memory in the brain brings you to connect and feel the attraction to what is familiar.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
It's so interesting. It reminds me of, so my partner Ike is a bald man, and I remember I had never dated a bald man until I met Ike, and I remember in the years, like maybe 3 or 4 years before I met him, I started developing this attraction to bald men, and I was like, God, this is interesting. Like, my dad's not bald, my grandparents, my uncles, like, no, I don't have any bald men in my life that I have any recollection of, but there was, I don't know, it was very clear, a very like distinct attraction that I noticed starting to happen over those years. And then of course I met Ike and, 10 years later, but it just makes me think of that. Like, what is that? Where did that come from?
Well, I know a little bit of where it can come from.
Yeah.
Because when I was dating, I was never interested in a man that was kind of hairy. But
Okay.
there was a guy that I met that I really liked, that I got to really love. And he was kind of hairy. So then after that, I was a little more receptive to it,
Okay.
in the next person. So it's also your experiences at
Right.
any stage, because the brain is not set at that young age. A lot happens and a lot of memories are in there, but our brains have plasticity. There's movement in it and we develop new synapses. So new experiences can bring us to like someone. Maybe you've watched some movies
Yeah, right.
where someone balding was the tough, sexy guy and got the women, and
That's right.
who
Yeah.
knows? But the
Yeah.
brain takes in all these images.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So here's the next question, and this is a little different than what I've been asking other people as it relates to, obviously the topic of this event is about codependency. So a question for you is, why do you believe that codependency is not the problem in relationships?
Right. I'm not crazy about labels.
Mm-hmm.
And the getting all tongue-tied. Codependency is a label, and it's like sort of saying that you should not be dependent on each other. And however, a relationship is about trusting and getting close and being dependent on each other. So they label it maybe interdependent, but I really feel like you get dependent on someone. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it has a lot to do with the level of consciousness that you're operating from. So when you're operating from, I'm going to talk about it in terms of chakras or energy centers. The lowest energy center has to do with security. So if you're operating from a sense of security, then you want your partner to make money. And if they're making money, you're great. You love the person and you're going to be there for them. You'll do whatever they need. If they lose their job, and like what's happening in COVID-19, a lot of relationships are having issues because the way it was before is different now.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they thought they loved or needed, they may not have. But so if you're operating from security, when you don't have that security with that person, you may not love them. You may fall out of love, and so that's a codependency based on a low level of consciousness or energetic awareness. And then if your dependency, your level of consciousness is at the sensation level, the second chakra or energy center. Then, if the sex is great and you're affectionate, you're getting the sensual pleasure that you want. Or it's also related to creativity. So if you're both creative together and do interesting activities, that might be the thing that holds you together. But if something changes, the sex isn't as exciting, the relationship lasts longer, then you may lose interest in that. And then that's another aspect. And then the third center is the power and control center. So if you've been operating from needing someone to be in charge, like a woman looking up to the man, or a man letting the woman handle everything, and then somebody's not so happy with that and that balance shifts, it could run into a problem. So what happens is we meet someone that matches us at the level of consciousness that we're at. That's who you're attracted to. Because if they're at a different level, if someone's on this love level where they're so loving and caring and they're understanding, but you're just wanting sexual pleasure or something, they're not going to just do that because they want other things and they will communicate, and it could get annoying to you. So you leave them.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're on a high spiritual level, you're not going to last very long. So you usually choose someone at a perfect level of consciousness, even though it may appear that they're so different. Because one is talkative and the other is shy, and one gets work done and the other one smokes pot and lies around, but you're at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
And so you choose that partner, you love that person, and at the beginning it gives you a lot of joy. And after that, as the stuff starts to come to the surface, as it always does, because love brings up anything unlike itself for the purpose of healing. And that's the point where you begin to heal yourself. If you stay in there and get the help you both need, if you're both willing to do it, that's great. If it's just one of you, then you go get the help, get the understanding through counseling or coaching, and work through some of those immediate reactions and bring yourself to a slightly higher level of consciousness. And if you both do that, the codependency becomes a beautiful thing, and it adds to loving each other.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about when people do experience relationship problems, what do you think are the primary causes of them?
I've talked about this for many years now, that I really think there are three main causes of relationship problems. And because I talked about those centers of consciousness, but the first problem is really not understanding yourself, just not even knowing what are my dreams and desires, what really makes me happy, what is like a no-no, something I just could not tolerate, doesn't fit with my life plan. What are my life plans? How do I want to live my life? Just not knowing all of that. For example, if luxury and comfort is very important to you, and then you choose a guy, a woman chooses a guy who's creative and doesn't care about that and doesn't make much money, you might really enjoy this person for a while. But if your need and natural inclination is for comfort and beauty, and this person's not providing that, you're going to end up with really big conflicts. So if you know yourself from the beginning that maybe you love creativity, but you want somebody who's creative and also has a financial mind or something like that, knowing who I am and what I really value is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Just before you even get into a relationship, and
Yeah.
and especially while you're in it. Then the second one is understanding the other person's um, desires and dreams and hopes and what makes them unhappy, what makes them happy. That's why they have these questions. You can find them on the internet, questions to ask in a relationship, like 100 questions to ask. And you're asking about, if you were stuck and you only could have one food or this or that, all kinds of questions. But if you ask those questions and know those things about yourself and about other people, it's huge. You can make much wiser choices from the beginning before you get pulled into it and you have so much connection that it's hard to get out of it.
Mm.
And then the third piece is really understanding how the world works. Like that saying, it never rains, but it pours. So when you're feeling most needy, you're most probably going to have difficulty getting into a relationship because other people will feel that neediness. So that's why that's a time to work on yourself and get yourself into a better state of mind, or even like they say, fake it till you make it. So even talk and act as if you're not quite as upset and quite as needy, even though you're feeling that way, because it's so important to understand how the world works and what makes love develop and how important it is for people to feel safe and appreciated in a relationship, rather than that feeling that most of us give to the other person that they have work to do and they have to change and do something better because we know that we would be happier, and they'll be happier too if they make this change, whatever it is. Stop smoking pot, stop watching porn,
Hmm.
whatever the other person's thing is, they've been doing it a long time. It's not that easy for them to stop. They really want to be accepted and loved. And if they know that they're accepted and loved, then they may be willing to finally do some work to improve. But it has to come from the other person wanting to improve to please you because they want to. It's got to come from them, not from you wanting to change them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really accepting them.
Yeah.
And there is another little piece, understanding the way the universe works. So it's understanding, the third part is understanding how the world works and how the universe works. And there are these universal laws. I have them in my 30 love lessons for the soul. One of the lessons is all about the universal laws. And when you follow those laws, like a law of giving and receiving and a law of compensation, and when you understand these laws and don't fight them, good things happen,
Mm.
and love happens, and love grows.
Mm. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for going through those three things. So like one of the things that stood out for me was you mentioned somewhere in the mix about neediness. Why do you think we experience that for people who have that like experience of neediness towards other people? Like, what are your thoughts on where that comes from?
So much of that has to do with your childhood.
Mm,
That, I mean, recently I've spoken to a few people that they were adopted and they felt neglected, or not necessarily abuse, but just maybe a parent left or a parent died at a young age or whatever. They did not receive something at a young age that they really needed. And their last few, or later on, their last few relationships, somebody left them. So they feel I was abandoned. But if they really look at what went on in the relationship and they really understood what the other person wanted, what I wanted in the relationship, how I behaved, how they felt, if you understood all of that, you wouldn't feel so abandoned, and then you wouldn't have to cling to the next one.
mm-hmm.
Because in relationships, it really should be a feeling of, what does this person offer me? Is this really good for me? Am I a good match for this person? I dated a guy once who loved ballet dancers, and I went to the ballet with him, and he was oogling them. Well, I'm not a ballet dancer, so there was nothing I could do. I could stand on my head. I could be a great gymnast. I did study gymnastics. I taught it and coached it at one point. But I mean, if he wants a ballet dancer, then there's nothing I can do. I should know that, understand it, and wish him well.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in for this latest class with Dr. Erica Goodstone. She talked with us about the love experience, healing through love. One of the things I wanted to touch on at the end of this class is when we talked about where neediness comes from. So if you're struggling with codependency, chances are you might also struggle with this inner sense of neediness, this wanting to kind of grasp and hold on to others around you because you might believe that those are the only people who can actually meet your needs. That by holding on tightly to others, you won't be abandoned or you won't feel shame or not good enough, those kinds of things. And I wanted to touch on this because it's definitely something that I'm continuously working on in my own codependency recovery. And I think so many people are. And it's interesting because so much of this neediness does come from what kinds of experiences did we have as children? And did we get our emotional needs met? Did we get our physical needs met? Did we get, other kinds of needs in our lives met by our parents, which at that stage of our life game, that's what they were there to do. That is the design. However, that is not often what a lot of us have received. So if we didn't get those needs met at those really precious ages, then you might now be an adult thinking that you still need to get your needs met from those outside sources. And the interesting thing about this journey is that I have discovered over the years is that there are certain needs that we can only fulfill on our own, that we can only fulfill by ourselves. Or maybe if you believe in some kind of higher power, then you would be fulfilling that with your higher power in some way. But things like, for example, self-love, you can't ask someone else to give you self-love. Other people might love you, but only you can provide for you self-love because you are the self that you need to love. So it's just an interesting kind of dynamic and interesting thing to dive into on this journey, that there are certain things that you might want, but there are also things you might need, and what's the difference between the two. So trying to recognize where you're being needy, which might be really just like wanting certain people to act and behave in certain ways to fulfill your needs, as opposed to you tapping into the person that really needs to do that work being you. And how can you cultivate that self-love? How can you really dive into reparenting your inner child and doing that work that was never done, and you didn't have the foundation set perhaps in your childhood to get there. But the good news is you are that one you've been waiting for. You are the answer to that, and you can absolutely reparent yourself. You can absolutely love yourself and cultivate that inner sense of validation and love. Thank you again so much for tuning in to this and all classes of Breaking Free from Codependency, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care.